Hey y'all, as you can tell from my upload schedule being dead recently, along with the fact that I've recently completed every achievement that Currency Wars has to offer, I have sunk way too much time into this game mode. I don't like giving credit to the IPC a lot, but they really did strike gold with this one. Speaking of gold though, it seems like a lot of you requested some tips on how exactly to go about managing it. So in today's video, I'll teach y'all how to be master planners, no cheat strats here. We want consistent ways to get your early game off the ground, even if the game offers you absolutely nothing and you're forced to refresh down. Because, as nice as the idea of just save until 50 gold is, sometimes you do actually need to spend early in order to get your run off the ground. First things first, if we want to properly manage gold, it's important we assess how much gold we actually have to work with. At base, you're guaranteed a minimum of 5 gold every node, win or lose, with the only exceptions being the first 2 reward stages, which offer you 3 and then 4 gold. From there, you can also earn extra gold depending on your win streak. You always get at least 1 extra gold, which gets bumped up to 2 in the 2 to 4 win streak range, 3 gold at 5 consecutive wins, and 4 gold at 6 or more consecutive wins. And finally, you can also earn an additional 1 gold as interest per 10 gold held, up to 50 gold. This is why the common advice is to just save until 50, since gaining an extra 5 gold per node adds up pretty quickly, especially the earlier you can hit it. Not to mention that early game you're subject to losing much less HP, making early losses a lot less punishing. For other supplemental ways to gain gold, there's 3 reliable ways to get a small boost of early game income via bonds. Going from best to worst, we first have Cosmic Scholar, which only requires 2 nodes to generate 3 gold. That can easily be taken care of in the 2 reward nodes if you happen to land on Mini Herda and Asta. Heck, if you happen to land on an early Ron May somehow, the 3 of them can earn the plus 3 gold in just 1 node, after which you're free to sell them if you want. That being said, Asta is a DOT bond member too, so she's actually pretty strong early game as well if you pair her with a Jiao Qiu or Kafka. You could even try running 2 DOT, plus 2 Cosmic Scholar to try and earn that extra 3 gold into the early combat nodes for that bit of an extra economic push. Next is Night Demigod, which requires 3 nodes for that plus 3 gold, and unfortunately doesn't scale up until you hit at least 4 Night Demigod members. That being said, if you somehow happen to have that many and can burn a reward node or something on it, then it could be worth keeping in mind. Last, and also least, we have the IPC bond. Forcing Aventurine and Jade on the same team, who don't share any other bonds together, and whose final and only other member is a whopping 5 cost, and also getting only 1 gold per combat or encounter node, meaning you have to actually field them and risk HP in order to reap the benefits, is usually a bad idea. The only place I can see them working together is in Himeko Nova teams, where the increased shield strength does help out shield bond Himeko quite a bit, and Jade can provide consistent backline AoE to help Himeko charge her decimation assist skills. There's a reason you don't see this strategy often, mainly because it's weak, but hey, if any DPS can pull off running 1 or 2 weaker units on the team just for more econ, it's definitely Himeko. As you can see, there aren't many ways to earn beyond the base income the game provides to you every node, plus Winstreak's interest, like plus 3 gold here and there, and like plus 1 gold per node with a very heavy restriction. Not very reliable. Therefore, common advice would dictate that the best way to manage your gold is to, again, save as much as possible until you hit the 50 gold benchmark. If you need to spend gold on crucial units offered to you for free by the store without refreshing, it's best to manage your income so you're not below the next cap of 10 interest, since going down from 30 gold to 29, for example, means you're wasting 1 gold in interest for basically no reason. You should also generally prioritize experience, as higher store levels mean not just easier access to higher rarity, more powerful units, but also more available team slots, raising your power level by default. There are 2 main exceptions to this rule, outside of the obvious case where your run is literally almost finished and hoarding gold is useless. The first scenario in which dipping below 50 gold might be financially to your advantage is if your win streak is extraordinarily high. How high, you might ask? Well, let's look at an example. Let's say you're still in the early game, and the next node is still looking pretty rough with your current investment. If you could spend 20 gold to improve your roster, you'd be sure that you have enough power to preserve your win streak. Disregarding your current squad HP, since again early game HP loss is typically negligible compared to mid and late game, is it worth it to spend down to preserve your win streak? If your win streak is at 0, it's usually best to save. You get the same amount of gold whether you win or lose in this bracket, and spending that much gold to try and get ahead will hurt your gains too much in both the short and long term. Even once we start getting to the 2 to 4 win range, it's still perfectly fine to let go of a loss streak if it means getting to save a significant amount of gold by doing so, since every win from 2 to 4 gold only nets you +1 more compared to not maintaining a win streak at all. However, once we start to get to 5 wins or higher, losing as much as 3 gold per node starts to look very, very discouraging. At this point, losing your win streak just becomes as much of an immediate gold loss as spending 20 to 30 gold worth of interest, except it also comes with a continued loss in gold if you continue to be greedy. Spending below 50 interest to keep an extremely high win streak is not just good for keeping your HP high, it's the financially responsible decision too. Sometimes those impulse rolls to chase a stronger roster don't come from a bad place after all. Self-preservation is important, which I guess is pretty on brand for an IPC game. If you're already strong, there's no harm in spending a bit more just to stay ahead. In fact, if we look at the way experience works in this game, thanks to gaining just 2 XP per node and 12 XP per boss fight, you're really only guaranteed to hit store level 6 a bit after the first boss just relying on passive XP gain. If you want higher store levels, you need to spend. And considering how level 7 offers the highest chance for 3 cost units, which happens to be where many strong DPSs are, you're probably going to need to shell out some dough to power level if you want a strong roster for endgame. This is even more true for 4 and 5 cost units, who only get more and more common the higher store level you reach, unlike 3 cost or lower units that start to rise and plateau at a certain point, but start dropping off in commonality after a certain point. To be precise, the optimal level for each unit is level 3 for 1 cost units, level 6 for 2 costs, level 7 for 3 costs, and level 10 for both 4 and 5 cost units, strictly speaking in terms of rarity. As you can see though, the average gold cost to get even 1 copy of the unit you want is quite expensive, even at their absolute cheapest. Most of this cost actually comes from refreshes, so if you have any way to discount those, such as with long-term gains or gaining free refreshes directly, that should help immensely, especially if aiming to get multiple copies of the same character. Similarly, being able to see 2-star copies of units from places like ores, certain investments, or bond rewards ends up saving a lot more gold since you're not only saving the cost of buying the 2 additional units, but also the additional refreshes needed to obtain them. Overall though, if you're hoping to 3-star your more expensive 3 cost and up units, the amount of gold you need to spend is often high enough that it's best to save up for that passive 5 gold interest per node. Interestingly though, due to character pools generally getting smaller and smaller at higher cost, at their cheapest, 2, 3, and 4 cost units are all equally expensive if you're hunting a specific copy, despite 4 cost units being, well, 2 gold more per copy than a 2 cost unit. This is because 2 cost and cheaper cost pools generally tend to have more units per pool, whereas 4 cost units tend to have way less units per pool, meaning that if you're hunting for a specific unit, it's actually easier to find that specific unit at a higher cost compared to that of a lower cost. The only major difference, then, is in how much experience is needed to hunt them down at their most optimal store level, which, honestly, for 2 and 3 star units, store levels 6 and 7 really aren't that far apart. For 4 star units though, store level 10 is of course much farther, meaning that if you're just hunting one 3-star copy, you're actually better off refreshing around store levels 8 and 9 instead of spending the 84 gold a lot of the time to get to level 10. However, for 5-star units, the benefit from going from even level 9 to level 10 is so large that you should almost always go straight to store level 10 if seeking out a 3-star, usually Cyrene or Silverwolf 999 for the immediate gamewood effect. All 5 costs are good enough at 1 to 2-star copies, and basically win the game at 3-star, but you know, it's fun to cheese out a guaranteed victory with those 2 specifically. Though, granted, Silver Wolf is a bit harder to get thanks to diluting the 5-star pool, which raises the average expected cost per specific copy at her rarity by 1 or more gold. Don't forget that Black Swan has a revelation card to help raise the chances of getting 5 cost as well. That 3%, especially before a max level store, helps a lot more than you might realize. Not to mention that there's actually a bit of an added difficulty to getting 3-star 5 cost units, specifically thanks to higher cost units working on a limited pool system, making the amount of times you need to refresh to see the 5th and subsequent copies much higher. For more information, I highly recommend checking out this explanation video by StormCL, which should be accurate right now as to how the store works as of version 4.4. Anyways, moving on to the second situation in which saving might not necessarily be to your advantage. If we rewind back to the 1-cost units, the highest chance of obtaining them is actually at the start of the game, during the first 2 nodes. In fact, for every subsequent store level, the chance of seeing them diminishes more and more, often outweighing the value of saving for interest, especially early on. This matters especially for carries like Mighty, Aglaya, and Fei Xiao, who are very reliant on being 3-star in order to carry the early game, and sometimes going into late game. In fact, if you want to play them, I actually highly recommend spending entirely down to 0 gold. This is because the additional 3 or more gold cost per unit every time you go up a store level far outweighs whatever little you might be able to earn in early game interest, and only grows worse the higher your store level goes. Not to mention that Mighty and Fei Xiao in particular have permanent ramp-up systems, and thus want early game power to start stacking up as soon as possible. You'll want to aim to snag their 3-star variants, ideally before the Plane 1 boss, and at the very least before store level 6 in Plane 2-3, spending absolutely 0 on experience until then. Xiaoqiu is listed in yellow, mainly because his 2-star version has 50% more healing than his 1-star version, which is a huge deal since it's per debuffing hit, aka every single hit with Mortonak's Blade. Very good early game sustain, but I wouldn't spend gold on refreshes just to level him up. For all the 2-cost or higher units, I'd recommend just saving 250 gold where possible, only spending on the absolute essentials. Then refreshing up until 50 gold at their optimal store level to try and snag their 3-star copies for maximum efficiency. As mentioned before, for 2 costs, that's store level 6. Regarding those units in orange, 3-star Evanesia is only if you're playing her as hyper carry, otherwise she's fine as a 1-star off-field bond bot. Ashvale is only a must for Galaxy Rangers in 3-star terms, as is with Rappa for her 1-cost situation. 3-star Sparkle is only worth it if playing skill points, as is with Dill, and 3-star Kafka can be strong with DOT, but is less necessary with Mortonak's Blade increasing her attack frequency. Not to mention, Black Swan being Dot's main DPS and wanting the equipment all to herself, usually a propeller plus double boot setup if you can afford it. With how cheap 2-star versions of these characters are though, I'd say if you need them, there's no harm in picking them up if you don't have to go out of your way to do so. As for 3 cost, this bracket has the most viable hyper carries, especially endgame viable ones. Himiko Nova is by far the strongest here, followed by Saber and then Sela, in yours truly's opinions and experience. Any of these 3 can usually brute force through most affixes too, especially if you have them at 3 stars. Himiko Nova specifically really wants her 3-star, thanks to the fact that part of her gimmick is that she literally gets more on-field strength from increasing her star rating. Like, here's how much stats the average 3-cost DPS gets from their star rating, and here's Himiko's. I think the fact that her on-field strength doubles with every level, on top of all of her other stat improvements, should tell you how imperative it is that she in particular gets that 3-star form as soon as possible. Other honorable mentions for strong DPS include Akron for debuff, Silverwolf 999 for elation, and Dr. Ratio for follow-up, with both being arguably the strongest DPS within those bonds. Akron in particular also has Galaxy Rangers, and benefits much more from the Mortonak's Blade DLC, as does Silverwolf, thanks to his Stellaron Hunter identity. But don't sleep on the Doctor either, who also likes debuff spam becoming meta. Silverwolf 999 getting rank ups is obvious, though if you're not playing her, you may actually want to keep her unranked on purpose due to the fact that she counts as 1 extra body in the cost pool, meaning that at 4 cost rarity, she makes grabbing any specific 4 cost hard to get and same for 5 cost units. Speaking of which, if you want to invest in 4 cost units, you'd probably want to go level 9 if aiming for one 3-star unit, unless level 10 is already in your budget. The most important 4 cost units here are definitely these sustains, with Luocha and Fuxuan being late game powerhouses. Yanqing, Sparksy, Casterus, and the Herta are all pretty solid at DPSing, but the first 2 are often better off playing a sub-DPS role, and the last 2 come way too late, with an earlier alternative being stronger in their bond of choice. Boothill certainly wants his 3-star if possible, but the Galaxy Rangers game plan makes it a bit of a lower priority compared to 3-starring his other teammates first. And while Hysolens gains a lot from her star levels, she needs Black Swan to start outputting endgame level damage. And for the 5 costs, well, Cyrene and Silverwolf 999 obviously have their game-winning 3 stars, the DPSs want their 2-star forwards at the bare minimum, and the supports are usually fine at 1 star, just because of their utility. Realistically, any 3-star 5 cost should win the game on the spot, thanks to how comically overpowered their stat increase becomes, but you know, some 3 stars are more game-winning than others, I guess. With the optimal times when it's actually good to bring the bank out of the way, I also saw quite a few comments asking about when a good time to pivot would be, and generally speaking, you want to move on from the big 4 of early game carries around the encounter to boss nodes of Plane 1, or even getting into Plane 2. Before then, it's really hard to build a solid team with less team slots, less equipment from no supply phase, and less gold overall. But past that point, those big 4 teams stop outputting enough damage to clear on their own. Honorable mention to Break, who barely just missed the cut, and is pretty powerful early game, but honestly really wants Dahlia and Fugue Eidolons as well as a non-trial build or a charging sail on Rappa. As for how to pivot, it's really not too complicated. Usually it's best to pick up any characters you have any high investment in, and then hold them in the preparation area until you have all the core pieces assembled. You have 9 slots for a reason. In general though, the most consistent strategies I found that beat this game mode involve using Himiko Nova, Saber, or Scylla. Himiko Nova's strongest bond by far is Shield, simply because it protects and deals damage at the same time. As soon as you can grab a March and a Firestorm, you can start leading into her as a main DPS. Focus on rushing store level 7 to grab 3-star Himiko, as well as 4 Express cohort members for her next power spikes. Then get some extra shielders if necessary, and stack Zeridra and some extra AoE to help Himiko ult loot more consistently. Saber, of course, really wants Gilgamesh. Huohuo also serves as a pretty serviceable sustain early game, and helps contribute to 3 energy. Afterwards, she just really wants as many turns as possible, typically via Sunday while aiming for more 3-cost copies of herself at sword level 7. And spikes yet again with RMC, who absolutely skyrockets her DPS loops. Scylla is less bond reliant, as she is Firestorm and 3-star reliant, but Quantum Resonance is excellent for her, in addition to containing 2 very strong generic supports in Sparkle and Tribi. Zeridra is also a very high priority pickup for her, as well as 2 Belobog for more turns. Any way to amp her or accelerate her turns for more Firestorm procs and thus more execute chains for even more power is much appreciated. 3 less powerful 3-cost strategies that were mentioned before, but are still strong enough to be well Creator 50 endgame viable, include Dr. Ratio, Silverwolf 999, and Acheron. Interestingly, all 3 of these characters benefit immensely from both Firestorm and Mortonak's Blade, though that's where the similarities end. Ratio wants 3 follow-up to start dealing damage with the additional 300% attack procs. And early game can use Asta and Xianzhou for access to both Cosmic Scholar for healing and Econ, as well as DOT for damage. Xianzhou and Mortonak's Blade also form a very powerful debuff core, which all 3 of these teams and many more can abuse for its strong amp in the form of unremovable debuffs, while still providing some sustain. Zeridra is essential here, due to every one of Ratio's skills being 3 to 4 attacks for Firestorm, as well as any way to ensure he spans as many turns as possible, somewhat like a different variation on playing Scylla. Silverwolf 999 obviously wants Elation, but can also use Mortonak's Blade's unique Celeron Hunter status to supercharge her MMR with fixed 40 punchline Elation skills. Once she has 3 Elation and Firestorm, Just focus on ranking her up at the store level 7, then power leveling the store so she can get access to her 2 other powerful 4-cost supports. Acheron is Emblade's ideal debuff partner, of course, but she also gains a unique synergy with the Ashblade core thanks to also being Galaxy Ranger. Firestorm is usually her go-to early game, but she can also make great use of equipments like Pun Generator for the lucky crits, and Propeller late game due to Galaxy Ranger stacking absurd amounts of speed. I might release guides on these characters later, depending on how much demand there is and how I'm feeling, since there's a lot I want to cover on this game mode, so let me know if there are any characters, bonds, or playstyles you'd like to see me cover in depth. And finally, while I did say I wouldn't exactly cover chi strategies, there are a couple ways to instantly win the game if you know where to look. So let's take a look at a couple of not too uncommon scenarios that are pretty much just these auto wins. Starting with the Holy Grail bond, while it is RNG, obtaining Archer from a quest reward early on is essentially a free win, and easily worth spending the 40 gold or whatever condition you need to acquire him immediately. Slap on a Rin and Sparkle, and watch as it creates a full build for your entire team, and you steamroll every single fight in the game. I can't believe you can just randomly get this guy from a starting investment, or with as little as 2 Grail Bond members. As for Saber, I already mentioned how she was in my personal vote for top 3 most consistent strategies, so imagine how strong she becomes when she gets access to Avalon, which boosts her energy gain, her ult damage, and makes her or any unit who wears it immortal. It's actually pretty strong on any ult spammer such as Evanesia, and can even be slapped on the on-field Fu Xuan to make your entire team pseudo-immortal, but of course, who else could be more worthy than the King of Knights to wield her own sheath? Other win cons include funny pick-on-site Prismatic that completely change a character's identity, like I Am Locha changing March 7th from a Himeko bot to a speed demon that heals enemies to death. I'd still recommend playing Quake Himeko for max damage, plus a double boots propeller setup on March, or Firestorm with Himeko Nova if you prefer the damage split to be more 50-50. Herda Era just gives both Herdas a million on-field strength, a million mini Herda copies, and a million Kurukurus, so buy as many mini Herdas as possible, spec into some AoE bond if you so desire, and then enjoy the 1 hour or so of unskippable cutscenes. And a Flash has 2 different hyper carries depending on which of the 2 strategies you get. For 1, it's Jing Yuan, supported by Jing Liu, and for 2, it's Yan Qing, assisted by Jing Yuan. Since the special Master-Disciple bond created by this Prismatic allows these characters to share their on and off-field strength with each other, stack as much on or off-field strength on the support, either via Firestorm or Propeller plus Boots, and then give your DPS some lucky crit and or speed-related equipment of their own, and watch them go to town. Another way to basically guarantee you win the game is by being able to choose the equipment you get. Since the investment strategies that enable this include silver and gold rarities, with some prismatic variants, you're much more likely to see them, and they're all pretty much pick on sight. Choosing to make 3 Firestorms, or 3 anti-grav boots, or 6 victory banners at your own leisure, and tailor to your specific archetype is incredibly broken, and all but guarantees an easy ride to victory. Certain emblems can also lead to some funny cheese opportunities. Wolf Hunt may be good early game, but with an emblem, either via Furbos or Peppy if looking at investments, you can get enough members and equipment early on to snowball the bond into a full-on Hule carry. And if you have Qingsha or Archer, who are easily capable of taking multiple actions in a single turn, either the follow-up emblem, which advances them by 10% per action, or the Bellbog emblem, which gives them an immediate turn after 10 actions, can let them achieve an infinite loop, never letting a single point of action value elapse after their first turn. And while not necessarily the game winner himself, Welt is just beyond broken, providing sustain, amp, and extending the round timer by 100 action value, giving an insane amount of time for ramping up, as well as for zero cycling the final boss. Oh, and he also provides lucky strike rate passively to the team with Galactic Voyager. With very little exception, he should be slotted into every single team comp. Pretty much no team feels complete without him. So to recap, gold should usually be saved to 50 for maximum interest, with the rest being spent on exceptional characters and experience, with 3 main exceptions. 1. You're on death's door, 2. You need to maintain a 5+ win streak, or 3. You're chasing a 1-cost DPS strategy, in which case you need to refresh down and spend gold until you get the result you desire. Waiting until the optimal store level to refresh for a certain cost is the best way to use your gold, which for 1 cost is right away, for 2 cost is level 6, 3 cost level 7, 4 cost level 9 or 10, and 5 cost level 10. Pivoting usually requires speccing into either DOT, Express, Xianzhou, or Wolf Hunt early game if you aren't interested in losing lots of HP, unless you have an extraordinary start or have vertically invested break. Save whatever units you think you might need to pivot into the prep area, then start leading into that endgame strategy once you hit right around the end of Plane 1. Some example characters worth considering to build around include Shield Himiko Nova, Saber, and Sela, as well as Silverwolf 999, Dr. Ratio, and Acheron, depending on which 3-cost DPS you prefer. And of course, with just a bit of luck, you too can make Madame Herta the peerless gem she was on her release patch. Thanks for watching.